Hi and Assalamualaikum. My name is Siti Nur Iman binti Azlan. In my presentation, I will focus on the history of artificial blood and the differences of hemoglobin saturation between real blood and artificial blood. So now I will start with the history of artificial blood. According to medical folklore, the ancient Incas were responsible for the first recorded blood transfusion. In the years to follow, medical practitioners tried numerous substances such as beer, milk, and sheep blood as a substitute for blood. They hoped that changing a person's blood could have different beneficial effects such as curing diseases or even changing personality. Karl Steiner, who has been called the father of immunology, was the one who primarily interested in the lack of safety and effectiveness of blood transfusion. His discovery had ultimately earned the 1913 Nobel Prize in Physiology or Medicine. According to Suman Sarkar in his article on September 2016, he states that no real progress was made in the development of a blood substitute until the year of 1616. It was when William Harvey described how blood is circulated throughout the body. In year 1667, the very first successful human blood transfusions were done. Unfortunately, the practice was halted because patients who received subsequent transfusions died. In 1854, physicians believed that the milk helped regenerate white blood cells, so the patients were injected with milk to treat Asiatic cholera. In 1868, researchers discovered that hemoglobin extracted from red blood cells might be utilized as a blood substitute. In 1871, they also examined the use of animal plasma and blood as a substitute for human blood. Both of these techniques were limited by significant technological issues such as the difficulties of isolating a large volume of hemoglobin and hazardous compounds in animal products that may be dangerous to humans. Then, in 1883, Ringer solution provided a crucial advance in the development of artificial blood. Ringer's solution is made up of sodium, potassium, and calcium salts. In research using part of frog's hearts, scientists found that the heart could be kept beating by applying this solution. This eventually led to findings that the reduction in blood pressure caused by a loss of blood volume could be restored by using Ringer's solution. While it is still used today as a blood volume expander, Ringer's solution does not replace the action of red blood cells, so it is not a true blood substitute.
Artificial blood or blood substitutes are solutions intended to replace transfusion of bank red blood cells. The term artificial blood or blood substitutes is not accurate since human blood performs many important functions. The preferred and more accurate terms are volume expanders for inert products, which is crystalloid base or colloid base, and oxygen therapeutics for oxygen carrying products. So why do we need artificial blood eventually? It is known that there are limitations from blood donation. Artificial blood was highlighted after emergence of HIV in 1980 due to the risk of its transmission by blood transfusion. Among the reasons highlighted are the safety of blood products is the most significant, especially with the emergence of novel infections, agents such as Ebola and H1N1 viruses, whose screening imposes additional expenditure. Red blood cells isolated from donated blood. These complications can be divided into non-infectious and infectious and are the most important concerns for the application of RBCs. Furthermore, cross-match and blood group typing are needed before transfusion, which is challenging in case of emergencies and when rare blood group types are needed. The structure of artificial blood is straight or cyclic hydrocarbon chains 13 with a general chemical formula of CnF2n plus 2, 14, and the straight form is a better carrier for oxygen than the cyclic one. The level of oxygen dissolved in PFCs has a direct linear relationship with oxygen pressure, and therefore high oxygen pressure is necessary for maximum oxygen carrying capacity. Here is the structure of artificial blood. As you can see, the normal red blood cells are 7 microns in size, while hemoglobin-based oxygen carriers are approximately 0.08 to 0.1 microns, and perfluorocarbons are 0.2 microns in size. This makes the artificial blood is a great substitute as it can function better than a real blood cells. However, artificial blood is still in the clinical trials. There are two types of oxygen carriers. The first one is perfluorochemical-based RBC substitutes, which is they are colorless, inert, and apparently non-toxic. It is also a liquid with low boiling point temperatures and are insoluble in water and alcohol. The capacity of PFCs in carrying oxygen was demonstrated for the first time by Clark in 1966. The second type is HB-based RBC substitutes, which can be obtained from animal-derived HB that has some advantages over human HB, including unlimited access with higher resistance to degradation of heme and the use of chloride ion instead of 2,3-DPG as an allosteric effect present in plasma. The high-level production of recombinant HB using simple Escherichia coli expression system has been reported by Hoffman at AL26 in 1990. There are two types of HBOs, which is acellular HBOCs and cellular HBOCs.
Next, we will discuss the case study's major question: how effective is synthetic blood? With me, Kesha and Dabinto Atman, we will work on this together. In order to answer the question, we must first understand why artificial blood is necessary. Is this normal healthy red blood cell insufficient? Thus, there are three main causes for our need for artificial blood. Longer shelf life is the first advantage. Normal red blood cells, as is well known, can only be kept for 35 to 42 days and must be kept in a blood-bearing refrigerator with a temperature of 2 until 6 degrees Celsius. This cannot be disputed because, in addition to being expensive, using normal blood cells past their shelf life might be a wasteful practice. Not to mention that the number of regular blood cells is very limited in supply. However, artificial blood can avoid all of these inconveniences. If artificial blood proves to be a success, it can be kept at room temperature for a long time, which is 1 until 3 years before being utilized. Additionally, since this product don't need to be refrigerated, the cost of storage will go down. Artificial blood is also required because it will be a universal blood type that doesn't need to be tested for compatibility. This will also lessen the chance of administrative errors leading to mismatched transfusions. Last but not least, the need for artificial blood arises from its ability to lower the danger of blood-borne disease, which can be transmitted through contact with contaminated blood and other bodily fluids. Since artificial blood is sterilized, the risk of spreading viruses or disease is reduced. We will then move on to problems arising from artificial blood. The fundamental issue with perfluorocarbon artificial blood is that it contains fluorine and carbon, two hydrophobic chemicals that do not readily interact with the bloodstream. To create an emulsion, it must first be combined with other molecules. This is referred to as an emulsifier like lipids. Early PFC emulsions, however, had issues with the emulsifier's toxicity. Flu-like symptoms and an increased risk of stroke in treated patients are the side effects of perfluorocarbon artificial blood, which has limited efficacy. Here are a few perfluorocarbon clinical trials, the majority of which are still awaiting FDA approval. Flowsodal D820, which was the first perfluorocarbon artificial blood that undergoes clinical trials, suffered from flow coagulation, which gave the product weak shelf life. The used emulsifiers were blood polymers, sometimes mixed with lecithin or phospholipids, which generate too little surface charge density to prevent this process. The emulsion needed to be sonicated before use because freezing it before storing it wasn't enough to prevent deterioration during thawing. Thus, the clinical trial for Flowsol D820 was stopped due to the insufficient shelf life. Next, we are going to look at problems arising from hemoglobin-based carrier HbOC artificial blood. The fundamental issue with HbOC is that it uses hemoglobin, the body's own natural oxygen carrying molecule, to transport oxygen throughout the body. The Hb used for HbOC is no longer inside red blood cell, thus it tends to be toxic in the blood. This cell-free Hb may result in renal toxicity, kidney clogging, and perhaps fatally high blood pressure. HbOC molecules can undergo a wide range of chemical alteration. It is challenging to foresee how well they will function as oxygen transporters and what kind of toxicity they may possess. Here is a list of HbOC clinical trials. Hemopure is one of them. It is only accessible through a clinical study or expanded access because the FDA has not cleared it as safe or effective for any use in humans, sometimes called compassionate use.
Differences of real blood and artificial blood. For nicknames, blood are fluid of life, growth, and health. Meanwhile, for artificial, we call it RBC substitute, AOC, or synthetic blood. For definition, blood means connective tissue in fluid form. Meanwhile, for artificial, an important chemical that provides oxygenated blood when there is no presence of red blood cell. For function, blood has a lot of function. For example, the nutrition purpose, pulmonary, excretory, transportation, control of acid-base balance, water and body temperature, as well as body storage capability and body defense. For artificial, it is used to replenish the lost blood volume as well as it can weaken the oxygen carrying capacity. Blood are composed of form elements and plasma. Meanwhile, for artificial, they contain distilled water, DSPE50H, iod lecithin, FO9982, and perfluoroacetylbromide. The cells involved in blood are the red blood cell, white blood cell, and platelets. Meanwhile, for artificial, they contain PFC and HbOC. Okay, so blood is made in bone marrow. Meanwhile, for artificial, they are made from taurine, carbon, okay, RBC from human placenta, cow blood, hemoglobin producing genetically modified microorganisms, or humans that are acquired. The color of blood is red, meanwhile for artificial they have white and dim red color. For the special cell involved, blood only have stem cell, meanwhile artificial they have stem cell, dendrimers, biodegradable B cells, and placental umbilical cord blood. For the lifespan in circulatory system, blood has longer lifespan than artificial blood. Okay, this same goes to the blood transfusion lifespan. Okay, the origin of hemoglobin in blood is from protein. Meanwhile, for artificial blood, they are from a bacterial called E. coli. Process or technique that involve information in blood is hematopoiesis. Meanwhile, artificial, we have polymerization reaction, hemoglobin synthesization, molecular modified, and artificial blood formula reconstruction. Blood has pH of 7.4, meanwhile artificial has pH between 7.1 until 7.2. The viscosity of blood is 3.5 until 5.5 cp, meanwhile artificial has range between 4 until 5 cp. For group, blood has 4 types of group, which is A, B, AB, and O. Meanwhile, for artificial, they are universal, so they have O negative type of blood.
Of course, everything will have their pros and cons. So, here is a few pros for using artificial blood. For the first one is, artificial blood does not need to be refrigerated because it does not contain any infectious agents and allergens. But for bloods must always be stored at a temperature between 2 degrees Celsius to 6 degrees Celsius in blood bank refrigerator. Next is, artificial blood does not need for blood matching. This is because HbOCs, are also known as hemoglobin-based oxygen carriers, have no membranes. They do not need to be cross-matched by type and can be given to any patient without previous testing. Artificial blood also have prolonged shelf life because surface charge of products used as artificial blood substitutes has a profound effect on their circulation time. Then, there's no risk of disease because when blood substitutes are manufactured, they can be sterilized to destroy bacteria and virus. It is also available in much larger quantities, especially when soldiers need more blood than ever and it needed to be transported and available in large quantities. Let's move to the cons. Firstly, artificial blood is very expensive. Analysts have figured blood substitutes will cost from $200 to $500 a unit, which is almost 2,000 ringgit. Then, artificial blood does not mix well with blood because PFC solutions, or known as power factor correction, are modified hydrocarbons. However, they do not mix well with blood and must be emulsified with lipids or oils. They also can cause unpleasant side effects. This is happened because hemoglobin without the cell membrane, which is stroma-free hemoglobin, breaks down rapidly and can cause coagulating issues, hypertension, and kidney failure. Other than that, artificial blood also does not carry as much oxygen because raw hemoglobin cannot be used because it is designed for the sole purpose of transporting oxygen and carbon dioxide throughout the body. Artificial blood also broken down rapidly because raw hemoglobin cannot be used because it would break down into smaller, toxic compounds within the body. After observing all the cons, we can say that artificial blood must be able to transport oxygen throughout the body and release it where it is needed because all the systems in our body rely on oxygen to make energy. Next, it must be shelf stable. This is because it eliminates the risk for infectious diseases in a blood transfusion. With a longer shelf life than human blood, some blood substitutes can be stored for 1 to 3 years without refrigeration. It is also need like antigenicity and eliminate so they could be sterilized to destroy bacteria and viruses, therefore eliminating any risk of spreading infectious diseases.